Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. My name is Laura Keith King, and I'm a member here, and my pronouns are she and her. First, please silence all of your electronic devices. We want to take a few moments to welcome any guests that we have with us today, and I know we have a few. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here, whether this is your first, second, or 1,000th time. It makes me so happy to see all of your faces and know that you're here, and I hope that we provide a worthwhile time for you today. If you would like to receive communication from our church office, well, we don't really have an active office right now, but our newsletter comes out weekly. Our emails come out weekly, and we have a monthly newsletter. If you would like to receive those communications and the other communications that we may send out, please fill out a guest card, which is found on the credenza on that side of the foyer. You may return those to the greeters or leave them in the offering basket or leave it on the credenza. We do not have a written order of service, but you will probably have received a worship service handout, which are to be reused, and we are very happy to have you take one home as well if you want, but those are the ones on the little table out there. They're just paper. The ones that we hand out today are on cardstock, and they're coated with acrylic so that they'll last. And we know that people do like to take them home, but we'd prefer if you take home the regular paper one. There will have been a little slip of paper this size if you have joys or sorrows that you would like to share with us, and we will honor them by lighting a candle right after the offering. And hand those slips in when the offering baskets come around. After the service, please leave your worship service handout and join us for fellowship. We would love to see you. We have refreshments over on that side, and there's coffee, decaf water, baked goods. We have some wonderful members who provide those for us as volunteers, and we really appreciate that time together. Now I have a few announcements that are pertinent, that are time sensitive. Today, after our service, we have a town hall. Those of you who are members and who have been attending and paying attention know that our pledge drive came up super short this year, not because of members who have, not because our membership is down or any, reason like people don't care anymore, but as with most churches, much of our budget comes from a few members who give very generously because they are able. And we had a number of deaths and people move away, so we have some big decisions to make about next year. And particularly if you are a member, we would like you to stay for the town hall so you're completely informed about what decisions we'll be making at our upcoming annual meeting on May 23rd. So that's this afternoon, today, this morning after the service, after some refreshments. Tomorrow is the annual Nehemiah Action for Just Pensacola. Just Pensacola is an initiative started about 3 years ago, consisting of 20, how many churches, Paula?
10 or 20.
10 or 20, a lot. 18 or 20 churches in the Pensacola area who all collaborate and send representatives to learning groups where they decide what the most pressing needs are for the community. And they have made some great strides with our elected officials and appointed officials in respect to many of the concerns that they decided were the most important. For example, the juvenile justice issue. They've been very successful in getting civil citations for some of these kids who've been getting thrown into prison. And many of us would not have been affected by that, but mostly it's kids of color who go to prison at 14, 15 years old, and Escambia County and Florida in general has a very high rate of that. So we've made some big strides, because when you have 1,500 people telling the elected officials that they want something done, they're much more likely to pay attention. So that is tomorrow at the Blue Wahoos Stadium at 6 o'clock, and you may have a ticket for it, but you don't have to. We really want to see numbers. It's going to be an interesting presentation, and if you're able to go, we'd love to have you attend. The next announcement that I have is on May 5th is the part 5 of Adult Exploration Series, Exploring a Spirituality of One's Own. And that will be here in the sanctuary at 11:30. And Lunch Bunch is meeting on May 11th. And see Hugh, Ed over there, if you're interested in that. If you want a ticket to Just Pensacola near my action, see Lauren, whose hand is up back there in the corner. Our service today is very different. It's not completely live, although I'm live, honest. It is woven in a single garment of destiny. It was provided to us by the Unitarian Universalist Association and put together by the liturgist Reverend Erika Hewitt, who is UUA's Minister of Worship Arts. And there's a homily in 2 parts given by our UUA president, Reverend Susan Frederick-Gray. And I think you'll find it very interesting. There's some very nice music. There will be a hymn you can sing along to if you choose. And some other music to just listen to. Okay. You may start the video.
You are a miracle in motion.
I greet you with wonder.
In a world which seeks to own your joy and your imagination, you have chosen to be free every day as a practice.
I can never know the struggles you went through to get here, but I know you have swum upstream, and at times it has been lonely.
I want you to know I honor the choices you made in solitude, and I honor the work you have done to belong.
I honor your commitment to that which is larger than yourself, and your journey to love the particular container of life that is you.
You are enough. Your work is enough.
You are needed.
Your work is sacred.
You are here, and I am grateful.
You are enough. You are needed. You are here, and I am grateful. If you are experiencing this worship service in community, I invite you to greet one another using one of those phrases or a similar phrase. You might be opening up the chat and chatting it to the whole group or to someone you know. You might be leaving it in the comments. If you are sitting on your couch with someone, you might turn and say this to them. You are enough. You are needed. You are here, and I am grateful. Now, if you're not experiencing this worship service in real time in community, you still have a community. So feel free to pick up your phone and text someone these words or DM someone these words. Pick anyone who you want to say these words to. You are enough, or you are needed, or you are here and I am grateful. And if it's you who needs most to receive these words, say them silently to yourself or imagine all of us saying them to you. You are enough. You are needed. You are here, and we are grateful. Please greet one another.
When I was younger, I enjoyed using multiple colors of embroidery floss to create friendship bracelets. Remembering the act of pulling each string into the other reminds me of the relationships we build together in our congregations and our wider association. Though our theologies, identities, and lived experiences vary, we choose to come together because we share a common vision. And just as when one of the threads fray a little and I gently pull it back into the pattern, so too do we call each other back into relationship when we inevitably fail to live up to our principles, values, and covenants. Friends, beloveds, may the light of our chalice illuminate the paths we're on and remind us that though our paths are many, we travel side by side, for our dreams and goals are woven together.
We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny, we're all connected, breath, you and me. We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree.
We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree.
We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea.
We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea.
Woven in a single garment of destiny.
Woven in a single garment of destiny.
Connected, breath, you and me.
We're all connected, breath, you and me.
We're all connected.
We're all connected.
Bird, cloud, and tree.
Bird, cloud, and tree.
We're all connected.
We're all connected.
Earth, wind, and sea.
Earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny.
We're all connected.
We're all connected.
Breath, you and me.
Breath, you and me.
We're all connected.
We're all connected.
Bird, cloud, and tree.
Bird, cloud, and tree.
We're all connected.
We're all connected.
Earth, wind, and sea.
Earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny.
We're all connected.
We're all connected.
Breath, you and me.
Breath, you and me.
We're all connected.
We're all connected. Breath, you and me.
Hi. So, Sage. In Unitarian Universalism, we talk about how we are all connected. And when I say that all people in the world are connected, what do you think about that, or what does it bring up for you?
I think it brings up like if everyone's connected, like on the ground, like how trees are touching, like if one tree's here and one tree's there.
Right. So even though we can't tell that the roots of trees are touching, they're still touching and they're still connected. And so that reminds you of how people are all connected.
Yeah.
And then what are some ways in which we are all connected? Can you give me like an example?
Like if we're best friends or family.
So best friends and families can be connected. Yeah. What about what I do can impact other people, right? So if I'm in a classroom and I sneeze, achoo, but I don't cover my nose or my mouth with my elbow, what can happen to my friends in the classroom?
They can get germs.
Yeah, they can get my germs. So even though I say, no, I'm okay, I don't need a tissue, I don't need to cover my mouth, what should I do?
You should cover your mouth even though you don't want to.
Right, because what I do can impact other people because we are all
connected.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
So Bradshaw, in Unitarian Universalism, we often talk about this interconnected web in which we are all a part of. Can you kind of share with me your thoughts on the interconnectedness of all of us during this time in history?
Not only do I think that humanity is a thing that connects us together, I also think it's experiences and what we've been through.
So I always thought growing up that we were all connected, but I really felt like there was no way to share that or prove that. Like I felt like what I did impacted other people, and there were always those people who were like, the only thing that matters is what I do because I am the only person that it bothers. But then when we had COVID, that was a clear example that we are all connected because what I do impacts everyone else. So COVID started with one person, and now we saw this worldwide pandemic because people weren't washing their hands or wearing masks or social distancing or whatever you want to say they were or were not doing. But it clearly showed that we are connected, and what one of us does clearly impacts everyone else. So if I tear down a rainforest in some tropical location, it will impact people on the other side of the world. So what we do does matter, like not just for us, but for those outside of our sphere. So Bradshaw, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's true, but in the instance that you brought up with the trees being cut down, I think not only that connects us humans, but also us creatures of Earth, as that will affect the animals in the ecosystem.
Oh, that's really good. I was only thinking of it as in terms of mankind, but I guess the interconnected web in which we are all a part also applies to animals and trees and whatnot. I really like that.
A beautiful quilt hangs on the wall in my home office, where I now spend so much of my time, including taping many of my recordings. It was made by Unitarian Universalist Jennifer Centric, then a member of the First UU Church of Youngstown, Ohio, where I served as minister. I hung it up early in the pandemic when I realized that little office would be the place where I would spend most of my days. The quilt brings me joy. The cacophony of rainbow colors signify welcome and inclusion. Each triangle brings its own bright beauty, a celebration of the individuality of each person. And there's a whimsical line of stitching that runs throughout and along the quilt's border, bringing a feeling of playfulness and the joy that is present in belonging. As a whole, the quilt reminds me of how we are all stitched together, an expression of our fundamental interdependence. If there's one thing the last 2 years of pandemic have taught us, it's the reality of our inescapable interconnectedness. Experiencing wave after wave of COVID-19 spreading quickly across the globe reminds us that our lives are inextricably woven together. Early in the pandemic, we learned to wear masks, understanding that I wear my mask to protect you, and you wear your mask to protect me. We rely on one another, and we can act to protect one another, or our actions can put each other at more risk. As Unitarian Universalists, we have long articulated the importance of interdependence. We name it in our principles. We know it from our understanding of science and biology, and we understand it as Universalists who reject ideologies of supremacy rooted in notions of the saved and the damned, instead embracing the worth and dignity of every person and the knowledge that no one is outside the circle of love. We know we belong to each other, and we belong to the earth and the web of creation itself. So what does this reality of our interdependence mean for our theology? Well, it's reflected in one of the ways we describe Unitarian Universalism. We say we are not a creedal tradition, but a covenantal one. We don't have a creed which all must profess. We don't all believe the same things about the nature of God or gods, or even share the same religious background. But what does bind us? The promises we make to one another about how we will live together in community and how we will live together in our larger world. You see, as Unitarian Universalists, a far more important question than what do you believe is how are we to live? And we answer this question through covenant. Covenant is our religious response to our fundamental interdependence. Because we are interconnected, because we belong to each other, our religious and moral impulse guides us to make promises to nurture the threads of our connection with justice and compassion and equity. Now, early formulations of covenant were understood as among believers with their God. But over the centuries, the influence of Unitarianism, Universalist theology, along with humanism, have reoriented our notions of covenant to be rooted in our relationships with one another, our wider humanity, and creation itself. We are a tradition concerned with the here and now and the conditions of people's lives today. One powerful example of this is how our principles are articulated as a covenant. We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We covenant to create practices that nurture justice and abiding compassion into the fabric of human relations. We covenant to join our efforts to work for a world where the web of life is infused with peace, justice, and equity, such that all people can thrive in their wholeness. The Universalists called this aspiration the kingdom of God. Today, we call it the beloved community. Covenant is a centerpiece of our theology because it calls us to practice and live our deepest values and the greatest aspirations we have for ourselves, humanity, and our world. Now, it's not about checking boxes and getting everything right. It's deeply spiritual work. It requires humility, listening, forgiveness, and open-heartedness. Because we are human, we don't live our promises perfectly. But covenant teaches us how to seek forgiveness from one another and ourselves, and it teaches us how to heal and come back together. Covenants are life-affirming and life-saving because the truth is we need each other. We hold each other's well-being in our hands and in our actions, and this is not a burden, but an incomparable gift. It's why we love. It's why we create enduring friendships. It's why someone's art can stir another's heart. It's why we gather in religious community and are deeply held and changed by its presence in our lives. Just like that quilt that hangs in my office, our UU principles reflect our fundamental interdependence and the role that covenant plays as a North Star, a guide for how we live and our commitments.
So, Sage, you asked earlier what it meant to be in covenant with someone. And a covenant is like an agreement, like how we want to be with each other. So what's an agreement you could make with like a friend?
We would be nice to each other and try our best.
So be nice to each other and try your best?
Yeah.
And what about what's an agreement or a way you want to be with your family?
I want to love them and get things on their birthday.
Love them and get them things on their birthday? You're so sweet. So what happens if someone like breaks the covenant? What happens if you and your friends agree that you're going to be nice to each other and you're going to have nice words with each other, and then one of you doesn't have nice words with each other? Then what happens? How do we come back into covenant or come back into agreement?
You can say I didn't like it. That can you please take it back?
Okay, so you can ask them to take their words back. Okay. Or we can also ask them, hey, what you said hurt me. Can you be more mindful next time about the words that you use? Huh? Okay. So it's not always easy, right? When we make an agreement with someone to keep it. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's always easy?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, so when you were younger, one of the things I said to you is that I would agree and covenant with you to use a nice voice, right? And not yell when I'm upset. But the other day, I was really upset because I was having a hard day. And I went to say something to your brother and sister. And instead of just saying it, Mommy yelled. Was that nice of me?
No.
No, right? Because I had agreed, right, to use a nice voice. And I yelled. But after I sat and I thought about it, I came back to them and I said, you know what? I'm sorry. Mommy agreed to use a nice voice with you, and I didn't do that. So I broke my covenant with them, right?
Yeah.
So I apologized and explained that I was having a rough day, but that was not a good reason for me to break covenant with them. And we talked about it, and I apologized, and I said I'm going to try moving forward to use my nicer voice, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that was good?
Uh-huh.
And how do you think they felt?
I think they felt proud of the mommy.
They were proud of their mommy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they said, I'm glad that you recognized and you came to us and you said something about the way you were behaving. But sometimes we don't always notice that we've broken covenant, right? So maybe I came and I'm yelling at you and screaming at you, but then I don't ever come back and apologize. Then what happens?
You break the covenant.
I broke the covenant. But so could you say something to me about breaking the covenant?
Yeah.
What could you say to me?
Oh, I say you broke the covenant. Can you please fix it?
Okay, so you can tell me I broke the covenant and can I please fix it? And how in that case would I fix it?
You might say sorry, or sorry I yelled. I'll try to not do it.
Oh, that's nice. I'd say sorry I yelled and I'm going to try in the future to not do that again. Yeah. Do you think it's good to have a covenant or an agreement with each other?
Yeah.
Why?
Because if you break it, you learn from your mistakes.
Because when you break covenant, you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
That's great advice, Sage. Thank you so much. Bradshaw, when we think about being in covenant with one another, what do you think of?
I think of an agreement with peers that allows you to come to a better understanding of each other.
So what happens if we break covenant? I know you had a situation with a friend where you all had an agreement about how you would treat others, and one of your friends deviated from that covenant. So how do we work on coming back into covenant with one another?
I would talk to them, explain to them what they did wrong, try to come to an understanding and work together to figure out a solution.
All right, so talking about it. And do you think that when we break covenant with one another that it is possible to come back into covenant with one another?
I believe that it is possible. Not all the time, maybe. Some people seem to not want to go into a sort of agreement, but for the people who are willing to change for the better, then yes.
Yeah, I agree. Like, everyone within that group or within that community must want to be in a covenantal relationship in order for it to be successful. But as you said, if everyone is in agreement with the covenant and works to, uphold the covenant and come back into covenant, then I think it's something that can be successful in a multitude of situations. Would you agree?
Yeah.
You kids have done a great job of sitting still, and now it's time for us to sing the children out. So please join me in singing the children out to their Sunday school classes. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. And now we're going back to our video, and it's part 2 of Susan Frederick-Gray's homily.
This we know. We belong to each other. In 1963, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. articulated this truth from a narrow cell in Birmingham, Alabama. In his now famous Letter from a Birmingham Jail, King shared his sense of disappointment with white, moderate clergy who condemned the tactics of nonviolent direct action to confront the racist police violence, segregation, and Jim Crow laws of Birmingham. In that letter, King called us all to a deeper knowing of our interdependence, writing, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." King offered this soaring image along the backdrop of lament, frustration, and disappointment at the clergy who preach the values of equality, but in the moment of need and opportunity for real and material change in the lives of Black Americans, condemned King. I imagine on a personal level that all of us know this feeling of disappointment and anger at being let down by those who you thought were with you and would show up alongside you in your moment of need. It's painful. And right now, we are all experiencing layers of this deep personal, social, and collective lament. As a religious community, we know these things to be true, that no one is outside the circle of love, that every person has worth and dignity, that love and compassion are the foundation for the world we need. We know this, and yet everywhere we see these values forsaken. For decades, we have witnessed the erosion of bonds of care, compassion, and shared investment in community. In just the 46 years of my lifetime, we've witnessed devastating rise of inequality, poverty, and indebtedness in the U.S. Alongside this has been the escalation of policing and mass incarceration and the criminalization of poverty. For more than a decade, we've witnessed the explicit political embrace on the right of dehumanizing and divisive rhetoric and policy rooted in racism, xenophobia, patriarchy, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. For years, we've experienced the growth of propaganda and disinformation. And now we are living with the direct impacts of this rhetorical and policy violence in the banning of books and the silencing of history, in the suppression of voting rights, in the caging of children, and in the vigilante violence and growing support of an authoritarian, anti-democratic white supremacist movement in the United States. And it is against this backdrop in the US that the COVID-19 pandemic began. And repeatedly, we have lost ground as we've responded to this virus through individualism, capitalism, and nationalism. Whether it is the refusal to wear masks out of some distorted notion of individual freedom, or locking down borders in ways that betray racist assumptions, to treating essential workers as expendable, to failing repeatedly to put global vaccination ahead of profits. We continue to fail in our responsibilities to each other. We live in a web of interdependence, whether or not we wish it so. And suffering thrives where the bonds of our relationships are defined by exploitation and domination. In the US, the coronavirus has thrived along historic and systemic fissures of disparity and racism and poverty. Fissures that have long defiled our social bonds. The impacts of these choices is that this virus has taken nearly 1 million lives in the US and caused so much isolation, despair, and trauma for all of us, but especially for those who are already impacted by systemic inequity and oppression. The layers of trauma, the layers of lament are deep. And in our own UU community, we've seen this disparity. We have lost so many young Black leaders, not just to the pandemic, but to the stress of these times. The deep lament is because the crisis of this pandemic, alongside the crisis of global climate change, of which the two are not unrelated, actually creates the necessity and the opportunity to draw humanity together for collective action to save lives and protect the future of our species. But again and again, we've chosen to double down on division, nationalism, profits, and a deadly status quo. Now, to be clear, I'm not pointing back to some golden day that never was. What we need is to chart a new way forward, rooted in covenant, rooted in an understanding of our fundamental belonging and our responsibilities to one another. King understood this when he reminded us that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. It is why it is so important to understand that the crises we face today are not just economic or political or social or even environmental. They are fundamentally spiritual and moral crises, reflective of the ways that the threads of connection that bind us have been defiled by greed and exploitation. And the tools we need to reweave these bonds are compassion, deep solidarity, mutuality, and care. These are defining times. It matters that we root ourselves in deep care for one another and a courageous commitment to the struggle for justice and thriving for everyone and for our shared future. After all, our religious communities are not social clubs. Our theology, our commitment to covenant is not an intellectual exercise. It is a call to a way of living and being. It is a call to action. This is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to one another and the values of human dignity, justice, and compassion that we hold dear. And this is no time to go it alone. Practicing covenant reminds us that it is an act of faithfulness to continue showing up for and with one another. It is an act of faithfulness to continue to center care in how we live in the midst of division. This is a time where we need greater courage and greater solidarity and a deeper commitment to the well-being of all people and all communities. We need investments that address poverty, climate change, and that invest in democracy and in human flourishing. Whenever I hear King's words, that we are tied in a single garment of destiny, I imagine humanity as a collection of brilliant stars held together across the fabric of the expansive night sky, holding promise for what can be when we understand that we belong to each other and that we share responsibility for one another. I also remember our own Universalist forebears who believed in universal salvation, but also knew that hell was something that existed here in this life, fostered by systemic injustice. And our work as a people of faith is to love the hell out of this world, to join our efforts to work for a world where the web of life is infused with care, with peace, with justice, with compassion and equity, such that all people can thrive in their wholeness. May it be so.
We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny, we're all connected, breath, you and me. We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny, we're all connected, breath, you and me. We're all connected, bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected, earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny, we're all connected, breath, you and bird, cloud, and tree. We're all connected. Earth, wind, and sea. Woven in a single garment of destiny. We're all connected. Breath, you and me. We're all connected. Breath, you and me.
Now is the time during our service where we collect the offering from those of us who aren't giving automatically through our bank account or sending in a check. And please keep in mind that our church is committed to being supported solely by our fundraisers and our offerings. And so it's us. We are the ones who make this happen. If you have a joy or concern on a piece of paper, please put that in your basket as it comes around. From Chris Brockway, we have a joy. My eldest son, Eddie, has been seizure-free for 3 months. My aunt and uncle sold their house and my grandma's house and will be moving down this summer with the family. From Carol Hemme, a joy, our third great-grandchild from our first great-grandson is due this month. And on my part, I'm very excited to share that my daughter Stephanie, who lives in Pace, is up in Massachusetts for her reunion, her school reunion. And they do a concert each year. It's the 127th year of this concert that they perform, and alumni come back to sing, and she's one of the soloists. And we get to stream it live, so yeah. And I have one announcement or a joy. We have Sunday Sweets. Did you say it's next week? Mother's Day, next week, yes. Sunday Sweets next week, yay. And we'll light one more candle for those joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts but don't wish to speak publicly.
All of us have hearts full of holes where arrows have landed. And all of us at some time or another have been the person who inflicted that hurt on someone else. How many times and in how many ways can you think of the times that you have felt stung, that you felt a relationship been torn asunder? And how hard is it to take the armor off and to do that vulnerable work of seeking repair, of asking forgiveness, of extending trust once again, or of naming the things that we need from each other in order to begin that work of returning and returning and returning. Whatever the word prayer means to you, however you understand it, I invite you to pray with me. Help us say yes, Spirit of loving mystery. Help us say yes, first to our own selves and to tending the wounds and the disappointments that have been inflicted on us for whatever reason. Yes to our worthiness. Yes to our hope in human relationship and returning to one another instead of turning away. For those of us who know that we have caused hurt, may we not be stuck in shame or in guilt, but may we loosen our own armor so that we can fully understand the hurt we've caused, seek ways to avoid those paths of wounding, and have the humility to want to try again in more loving ways. Mysterious love, often we are bystanders. Often we witness pain being tossed between two people or more. May we be willing to be custodians and guardians of love. May we interrupt when interruption is called for. May we call people to their fullest selves. May we name oppression when we witness it. But may we each be a member of community and of cohesion and of connection that calls people to accountability, but also to love, where we say yes to one another, where we say yes to that which is life-giving, yes to repair, yes to love in action that looks like the earning of trust and the guarding of trust. May we remember that our communities are woven through our speech and our actions and our trust and our teamwork. And may we keep showing up to do that sacred, holy work so that we can say yes to one another, to carry one another forward. May it be so for our relationships that are virtual, that are in person, that are chosen, and the relationships that are part of the yes we said long ago to being part of Unitarian Universalist community. You say yes to us, love and life, and may we keep saying yes to one another as a means of saying yes back to you. May it be so.
Please join me in reciting our covenant, which will be shown on the screen of. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Mientras late el corazón, debo decir si al amor me dolió la decepción y aún así te di el perdón. Si preguntan qué hice bien, diles dijo sí al amor. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
A spark of the holy can never be extinguished. Our chalice flame lives on each week in the very marrow of our bones, in the sparks of creativity and the glimmers of love which infuse and invigorate the best moments of our day-to-day. May we carry that light onward as we go forth as the symbol of our chosen faith, which recalls us to the sacred promises of our covenant as we close our sacred time and extinguish this physical chalice flame.
We are not alone, though sometimes we forget that truth.
We are woven into one cloth, one gorgeous blanket, designed for use, for comfort, to sustain, and to love.
And each and every day, this world advertises the potential of our shared beauty.
It is there for the taking, for the making, for the weaving.
In this moment, here together, we remember that we are the woven and also the weavers.
Each of us rooted in generations and stretching towards the future.
Held by communities and beholden to them.
Seeking wholeness and sought by life's desire for itself.
Loving the world and beloved so much more than we realize.
Part of the web of the beautiful blanket of creation.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us today, and please join us for fellowship. There is a postlude, and it's a pretty cool song written just for this service. You can stay and watch it, and it does say at the bottom, dancing is encouraged.
Wanting to belong, so they opened up the door. Watch the spark bring the flame to light. Then they knew at last that they love is the thread, the warmth and the weft that weaves all the world together. Love is the thread in the tapestry of life, woven through time together. Life force, spirit shimmering with light, a connected web of all. One alone, a barely visible thread. Interwoven, we all shine so bright. Love is the thread, the warmth and the weft that weaves all the world together. Love is the thread in the tapestry of life, woven through time together. Bring your gifts, bring your gifts, bring your strife, with nothing to fear or hide. Bring your joy, bring your light, shine your light, all of the parts of our lives together. Meaning, justice, truth, diversity. They found a true community. We sing together to lift our song and weave a world of harmony. Love is the thread, the warmth and the weft that weaves all the world
No, I'm not like leverage. Get off of me.
What do you mean leverage?
Don't lean on me.
Lean on
Unless you're
me.
not strong. Okay, come on, let's do this stuff. Okay. Do you want to say your joke now?
Okay, why did the pickle cross the road?
Why did the pickle cross the road?
Because of the pickle.
No idea what that. Because it's a pickle. Thank you, Sage.
You're welcome. Bye.